sometimes. The softest music comes from the quietest hearts, and Emma's song was just the beginning of a beautiful new beginning. Emma worked at a small-town diner called Millie's Diner. It wasn't anything fancy, just a quiet place where people came in for coffee, pancakes, or a quick lunch. The walls were old, the chairs creaked a little, and the smell of grease and coffee filled the air every day. Emma wore the same uniform every shift, a faded blue dress with a white apron, and her name tag that simply read Emma. She tied her brown hair into a loose ponytail, and her tired but polite smile never left her face. To most of the customers, Emma was invisible. They didn't know her story. They didn't ask. They just saw a waitress who took orders, brought their food, and cleaned their tables. Some people were kind, but most didn't pay attention. Teenagers laughed behind her back when she dropped a spoon or spilled water. Some older customers made jokes calling her the ghost waitress because she moved so quietly. They didn't mean it kindly. People saw her as a nobody, someone who was just stuck in a job meant for people who had no dreams. But Emma wasn't always like this. Every morning, she walked 20 minutes to the diner, wearing the same worn-out shoes that had holes in the soles. Her fingers were always a little red from washing dishes in hot water. She didn't complain. She didn't talk much. She just did her work and went home. She lived in a small apartment above a flower shop. It had one window, one small bed, and an old upright piano covered with a cloth. No one knew she had it. No one ever visited. Her life moved in quiet circles. Wake up, walk to work, serve food, smile, clean tables, count tips, walk home, and sleep. She had grown used to it. She had learned how to stay unnoticed. She was afraid that if people really saw her, they might remember the parts of her past. She wanted to forget, but deep inside, there was still a fire. Emma used to be someone else. She used to be someone people admired. Once upon a time, she was a gifted pianist. Her mother was a piano teacher, and Emma started learning when she was just 4 years old. By the time she was 12, she could play Mozart and Chopin without looking at the sheet music. She had performed in big halls. She had even been accepted into a special music academy. Back then, people used to clap for her. They used to smile and say she would be famous one day. But all of that changed when she was 17. Her parents were driving home from one of her concerts when a drunk driver hit their car. They both died instantly. Emma was at home waiting for them to return. She never saw them again. The pain was too much. She couldn't bear to touch the piano after that. It reminded her of her mother's voice, of her father's proud smile. Everything that once brought her joy now brought tears. So she ran. She left her town, dropped out of music school, and disappeared. She changed cities and took the job she could find. That job was at Millie's Diner. She told herself it was just for a little while, but time passed quickly. Days turned into weeks, then years. Slowly, she stopped thinking of herself as a pianist. She became just Emma, the waitress. She never told anyone her story. Millie, the original owner of the diner, had passed away before Emma joined. The new owner, a kind but distant man named Paul, never really talked to the staff. The diner still had a piano in the corner, an old, upright with dusty keys. No one ever played it. People thought it was just decoration. Some kids banged on it for fun, but it was mostly forgotten, just like Emma. A new manager named Mike joined recently. Was younger, around 30, and liked to keep things neat. He noticed that Emma was a hard worker, never late, never complaining. He sometimes tried to start a conversation, but Emma always gave short answers. He didn't push. One rainy Tuesday, the diner was nearly empty. Only a few regulars sat at their usual spots, sipping coffee and talking about the weather. A group of teenagers walked in, loud and laughing, wet from the rain. They made jokes, teased each other, and rolled their eyes when Emma came to take their order. One of them knocked over the salt shaker on purpose and laughed when Emma bent down to clean it. She didn't say anything. She just picked up the salt and kept working. The group sat near the piano. One of the boys, with messy hair and a smirk on his face, pointed at it and said, "Bet this thing doesn't even work." Probably older than she is. The others laughed. Emma heard them, but kept walking. Another girl said, "Hey, Emma, can you play something? Or do you just know how to carry plates?" The whole table burst into laughter. Emma's hand tightened around the tray she was holding. For a second, she thought about walking away, but then something strange happened. She didn't walk away. She turned around slowly, walked toward the piano, and sat down. The teens went silent, surprised. She looked at the keys. They were dusty, slightly out of tune. She gently wiped them with her sleeve. Her heart pounded in her chest. Her hands trembled. It had been so long since she had touched a piano. She closed her eyes. Memories of her mother's voice, her father's laughter, the stage lights, everything came rushing back. She placed her fingers on the keys. At first, she just played a soft chord. Then another. Her fingers began to move. She didn't think she felt. The notes flowed like water. She played the beginning of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, slow and emotional. The rain tapped on the diner windows and the room went completely still. Even the cooks in the kitchen peeked out. Customers stopped eating. Conversations ended. The teenagers stared with open mouths. Mike, the manager, stood frozen by the counter. Emma's head was bowed, her eyes closed, her body swaying gently with the music. Her fingers moved faster, more confident with every note. She didn't hear the silence. She didn't see the people watching. For the first time in years, she wasn't Emma the waitress. She was Emma, the pianist. The girl who used to make concert halls echo with applause. She wasn't invisible anymore. When she finished, the last note hung in the air like a whisper. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, slowly, someone clapped. Then another. Soon, the whole diner was clapping. Some were standing. Some had tears in their eyes. Even the teenagers who had laughed at her looked stunned. Emma stood up, her hands shaking, her face calm. She didn't say anything. She just walked back to the kitchen and picked up the tray she had left. But everything had changed. From that moment, she was no longer the girl people ignored. She was no longer invisible, the quiet waitress who walked. To work in the rain had reminded everyone that sometimes the most extraordinary people are hiding in plain sight. And though Emma didn't know it yet, this small moment was only the beginning of something much bigger. The sound of clapping still echoed in Emma's ears long after that evening at the diner. That moment when she sat at the old dusty piano and played in front of everyone felt like a dream. For years, she had hidden the part of her that once lived for music, but something inside her had woken up that night. It wasn't just the applause or the surprised looks on the customers' faces. It was the way she felt while playing free, alive, and connected to something that had been missing for too long. After her shift ended that night, Emma walked home through the wet streets. The rain had stopped, and the town was quiet.
All streetlights
reflected off puddles, and the wind gently blew her hair. As she walked, her thoughts were full of memories, some painful, some beautiful. Her fingers still tingled from touching the piano. When she reached her small apartment above the flower shop, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was cold and quiet. Her eyes turned toward the old upright piano in the corner, covered with a cloth. She slowly walked over, pulled off the cloth, and sat down on the wooden bench. The keys were slightly yellowed with age, but she touched them gently, like greeting an old friend. And for the first time in years, she played at home just for herself. The next day at the diner, everything felt different. People who used to ignore her now looked at her with new curiosity. Some customers asked if she would play again. Others left bigger tips and kind notes. One little girl even brought her a drawing of a piano with the words, "You're amazing," written in crayon. Emma smiled politely but didn't say much. She still didn't know how to feel about all the attention. It made her nervous. Mike, the manager, pulled her aside during her lunch break. "I didn't know you could play like that," he said. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Emma shrugged and looked down. "It's not something I talk about." "Oh," Mike said. "You should. People loved it. Maybe you could play once a week. Like a little music night, it'd bring in more customers." Emma gave a small smile. Maybe she didn't promise anything. She wasn't ready. The truth was, she was scared. That one moment of music had opened a door she had locked shut. A long time ago, And now memories were flooding back. She remembered being a little girl, sitting on her mother's lap at the piano. Her mother's hands guided hers over the keys, teaching her each note, each rhythm. Her mother would laugh when Emma made mistakes and cheer when she got it right. Her father always watched proudly, filming her performances with his old video camera. They believed in her, believed she could become something special, and she had. By the time she was 12, Emma was playing in music competitions and winning trophies. She performed in small concert halls and even got invited to join a special music school for gifted children. Her future seemed bright, full of promise. She had dreams of traveling the world, playing in grand theaters, hearing applause echo from balconies and golden ceilings. But that future ended the night. Her parents died. They were driving back from her school recital, a performance she had worked on for weeks. Emma remembered sitting by the window waiting for them to come home. The phone call came just before midnight. Drunk driver had run a red light. Her parents never made it back. After the funeral, everything changed. Emma moved in with her aunt, who didn't understand music or care much for it. The piano became silent. She dropped out of her music academy, packed away her awards, and slowly stopped playing. Every time she looked at a piano, it reminded her of everything she had lost. The pain was too much, so she ran away. Not from her home, but from herself. From the girl who used to believe in music, who used to believe in joy. She moved to a new town, changed her number, and started working at the diner. She told no one about her past. She wanted to be forgotten. For years she was. But after that night at the diner, the past started to pull her back. She found herself playing the piano in her apartment more often. Simple songs at first, then longer pieces. Her fingers were rusty, and she made mistakes. But the music still lived inside her. It was like learning to breathe again. One day, while playing a soft melody, she remembered something her mother used to say: "Music is a gift. Don't hide it. Share it, even if your heart is breaking." Those words echoed in her mind like a whisper in the wind. A week later, Emma finally agreed to Mike's idea. She would play at the diner on Friday nights, the first time she performed. Officially, the place was full. Word had spread quickly. People brought friends and family. Some brought flowers. Others brought questions. But Emma didn't want to talk, she just wanted to play. She sat at the same old piano, took a deep breath, and began. Her music filled the room like warm light. People listened with quiet hearts and wet eyes. It wasn't just about how well she played. It was how deeply she made them feel. Emma didn't play for applause. She played because, for the first time in a long time, it helped her feel whole again. After that, she played every week, each time. The crowd grew. Someone posted her video online. It got shared again and again. Within a few days, it had over 100,000 views. Then 500,000. People commented from all over the world asking, "Who is she? Where has she been? Why doesn't she have her own concert?" Emma didn't know how to respond. She didn't even have a social media account. But her life was slowly changing. One afternoon, she received a letter in the mail. Ahead, no return address. Inside was a copy of her last music school evaluation, the one she got just before leaving after her parents died. On the back, someone had written, "The world still needs to hear you. Come back when you're ready." There was a name, Professor Lawrence, and a phone number. Emma sat on the floor with the letter in her hands, tears rolling down her cheeks. She hadn't thought about Professor Lawrence in years. He was the one who had pushed her to believe in herself, even after she made mistakes. Had once told her she could be one of the greats. And now, even after all this time, he hadn't forgotten her. That night, she called the number. "Hello?" the voice said. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, "It's Emma, Emma Hart." There was a pause. Then a deep, warm voice replied, "I knew you'd find your way back." They talked for almost an hour. He asked about her life, her music, her pain. He didn't push, just listened. At the end of the call, he said something that stayed with her. "You don't have to be who you were before, but you can be someone even stronger now." That conversation gave Emma the courage to move forward. She started spending more time. At the piano, she played not just for others, but for herself. She wrote new pieces songs full of sorrow, hope, and healing. She accepted Mike's offer to perform twice a week. She even helped him fix up the old piano, tuning it and cleaning each key with care. Slowly, she stopped hiding. She told Mike about her past. She shared a few things with the kind customers who supported her. She wasn't ashamed anymore. Her pain hadn't disappeared, but it no longer controlled her then. One morning, she received an email from a music school in the city. They had seen the viral video and wanted to invite her to give a special performance, not as a student, as a guest pianist. Emma stared at the screen, heart pounding. She didn't know what to say. Was she ready? She thought about her parents. She thought about the little girl who used to dream big dreams. And she thought about the woman she had become, the one who served coffee by day and played music by night. She realized something important. She didn't have to be perfect. She just had to be honest. And so, with a deep breath, she replied to the email, "I would be honored." The journey ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in years. Emma wasn't running from her past. She was walking toward her future, and she was bringing her music with her. The diner was full again. It was Friday evening, and people had come from different parts of town just to hear Emma play. There were families, couples, college students, and even a few older women who sat near the front with bright eyes and tissues in their hands. The smell of grilled cheese, coffee, and cinnamon pie floated in the air, but most people weren't here for the food. They were here for her. Emma stood near the kitchen door, peeking out at the tables. Her hands were sweating, even though she had performed before. Every time she played, it felt like opening her heart in front of the world. The same old piano sat in the corner, looking much better now. Mike had helped repaint it. The keys were cleaned, and a small lamp sat on top, casting a warm glow. Mike walked over and gave her a nod. "You ready?" Emma smiled nervously. "As I'll ever be." She stepped out from behind the counter, walked to the piano, and sat down. The crowd grew quiet. Phones came out. People wanted to record the moment. Emma took a deep breath, placed her fingers on the keys, and started to play. The first piece was soft and slow, like a gentle rain. It made people close their eyes and forget the world outside. Then she played something faster, with energy and power, like a storm that built and broke open in beautiful thunder. The notes danced, flew, cried, and soared. The diner had never been so quiet and alive at the same time. Some people had tears in their eyes. Others held hands across the table. Emma played as if she wasn't in the diner anymore. In her mind, she was in a grand concert hall, her parents sitting in the front row, smiling at her. The music was her way of speaking to them, of remembering, and honoring everything they had given her. The pain in her heart, the silence of the years without them, all of it, came out through her fingers. When she finally finished the last note, the diner exploded with applause. People stood up. They cheered. Some shouted her name. Emma looked up, blinking back tears, and gave a shy smile. She bowed her head and stood up. As she walked back to the kitchen, people clapped louder. She felt something she hadn't felt in years' pride, not just in her music, but in herself. After her performance, a woman came up to her. She wore a fancy coat and carried a silver bag. "That was breathtaking," she said. "Do you teach lessons?" Emma was surprised. I haven't," the woman said, handing her a card. "You should. Here's my number. My daughter wants to learn from someone who really feels the music." Emma took the card and smiled politely. More people came over. Some asked questions, others just wanted to thank her. One man said, "I haven't cried like that in years." Another said, "You reminded me of my mother. She used to play the same song." That night, after everyone left and the lights were dimmed, Mike handed her a small envelope. "A thank you from all of us," he said. Emma opened it and found a note with her name, and inside was a collection of cash. "The customers pitched in," Mike explained. "They said you gave them something special." Emma felt her throat tighten. She had never asked for anything. She had never expected anyone to care. But now, people did. It felt like a warm light shining on the dark corners of her life. The next morning, Emma woke up to dozens of messages on her phone. Overnight, someone had posted a new video of her playing. It had gone viral again. Thousands of people had seen it, shared it, commented on it. Strangers were asking, "Who is this woman? And where can we hear more?" Emma felt overwhelmed. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She didn't even know how to respond. She didn't have a website or a music page. She had no manager or publicist. She was still the same girl who waited tables and lived above a flower shop. Later that day, she received an email. It was from a local news station. They wanted to do a story on her, the waitress with the golden hands. They called it Emma. Wasn't sure. She liked being quiet. She liked her simple life. But Mike convinced her. "This is your moment," he said. "Let people see the real you." So she said. The news team came to the diner a few days later. They interviewed her, filmed her playing, and talked to the customers. They asked about her past, and for the first time, Emma opened up. She spoke about her parents, her love for music, and how she had walked away from it all after their death. She told them about the old piano in her apartment, how she had been afraid to play again. When the interview aired, people all across the city watched it. Some sent letters, some emailed, or a few even showed up at the diner just to shake her hand. One elderly man, holding a picture of his late wife, said she was a pianist too. "Your music brought her back to me for a few minutes." Emma's story spread. More videos were shared. More invitations arrived. She got offers to play at events, teach at local schools, and even record an album. It felt like a wave was carrying her forward, one she hadn't expected. But inside, Emma still battled with doubt. Was she really ready for all this? What if? People expected more than she could give. What if she failed? One night, while sitting at her apartment piano, she received a message from Professor Lawrence, her old music teacher. They had talked on the phone before, but now he sent a formal invitation. "Emma, we're holding a concert at the Academy next month. Alumni and students will be performing. I would be honored if you joined us as our special guest." Emma stared. At the screen, her heart raced. That place was full of memories, good and painful. Going back there meant facing everything she had left behind. She didn't respond immediately. She played a piece on the piano instead. It was soft and uncertain, like a question without an answer. The room felt full of ghosts of applause long gone, of parents who were no longer alive, dreams that had once felt impossible. But as the final note faded, she realized something. She wasn't that broken girl anymore. She had survived. She had grown. She had found her music again, not through fame or success, but through honesty, struggle, and the kindness of strangers. Maybe she was still afraid. Maybe she would always carry the pain. But now, she also carried hope. She opened her laptop and replied, "Yes, I would be honored to perform." From that moment, Emma began to prepare. She chose a song she had written herself, a piece filled with emotion, telling the story of loss, silence, and rediscovery. She practiced every night. Sometimes she cried while playing. Sometimes she smiled. She imagined her parents listening. She imagined the audience feeling what she felt. Finally, the day of the concert arrived. She took a bus to the Academy. The building looked the same tall, proud, full of music and memory. Inside, students practiced in small rooms. Teachers walked the halls. She was welcomed warmly and shown to the green room. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage. The lights were bright. The hall was full. She could barely see the faces in the crowd, but she wasn't nervous. She sat at the grand piano, closed her eyes, and began to play. The room went still. The music told her story not with words, but with emotion. It spoke of a little girl full of dreams, of a terrible loss, of years of silence, and of a quiet comeback in a small-town diner. The notes wept and smiled, climbed and fell, and finally soared. When she played the last chord, she held it for a moment, letting the sound ring out, then silence, and then applause. Loud, strong, endless applause. Emma stood up and bowed. This time, she didn't cry. She smiled. She had made it back. After the concert, Professor Lawrence hugged her. "You've always had the heart," he said. "Now the world knows." Emma returned to the diner a week later. People asked about the concert. She told them it went well. She didn't brag. She just smiled and went back to serving coffee. But every Friday night, when she sat at the piano in the corner, people knew they were listening to more than just music. They were listening to a soul that had once been broken, now healed by the very thing it feared. And Emma, the quiet waitress, with the hidden gift, had finally stepped into the light. Emma's life was no longer quiet or ordinary. After her beautiful performance at the Music Academy, people began to see her differently. It wasn't just the people in her town anymore, it was the whole world. More and more people found her videos online. They weren't just watching her play the piano, they were feeling her story. She had gone from being a waitress that no one noticed to someone whose music could make strangers cry. The messages didn't stop. Every day her phone buzzed with emails, calls, and comments. Music school in New York asked her to be a guest speaker. A famous piano player wanted to collaborate with her. A man from a record label asked if she had written her own songs and wanted to help her record an album. Emma read every message carefully. It all felt too fast, too big. She still lived in the same tiny apartment above the flower shop. She still walked to the diner every morning. And even though the world outside her window was changing, inside her heart, she still felt like the same Emma, quiet, thoughtful, and sometimes scared. At the diner, things were different too. More customers came every week just to see her. Some brought flowers, others brought gifts. They didn't want her to bring them coffee, they wanted her music. Mike, the manager, was busier than ever, setting up small events and even helping her arrange a better sound system. He told her, "You're the reason this place is alive again." Emma smiled at his words, but in her heart, she still battled with fear. What if she wasn't good enough? What if everything disappeared again? One night after a performance, she sat alone at the piano long after everyone had gone. She played softly, eyes closed, fingers gliding across the keys like they were touching memories. Suddenly, she heard a voice. "You play like someone who's seen everything." The voice said. Emma turned and saw an older woman standing near the counter. She had white hair and wore a long scarf. "Sorry," the woman said. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I just stayed behind because I wanted to speak to you." Emma stood up. "It's okay. I was just playing for myself." "Don't just play for yourself," the woman said. "You play for the broken-hearted. You play for people like me." Emma didn't know what to say. The woman continued. "My husband passed away 3 months ago. We used to come here together. Tonight when I heard your music, I felt him sitting beside me again. Just for a moment. That's a gift, my dear. Don't ever forget that." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and hugged the woman, feeling a connection deeper than words. It was moments like this that reminded her why she played. Soon after, Emma was invited to perform at a city music festival. It was one of the biggest events of the year, and they wanted her to be part of the opening night. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but Mike told her, "Emma, this is your time. Say yes." So she did. Preparing for the festival was both exciting and frightening. She practiced for hours in her apartment. She wrote 2 original songs, pouring all her feelings into them. She called Professor Lawrence to ask for advice, and he encouraged her. "Just be honest with your music," he said. "People don't want perfect. They want real." When the night of the festival arrived, Emma wore a simple black dress. She didn't want to look flashy. She wanted the music to speak. The concert hall was huge.
Lights shone on the stage.
Hundreds of people sat in silence, waiting. Emma felt butterflies in her stomach. She whispered to herself, "You can do this." She walked to the piano, sat down, and took a deep breath. The moment she started playing, everything else disappeared. She played with her whole heart. Joy, pain, love, and loss all poured into the music. She could feel the crowd breathing with her, feeling every note. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then the applause began, loud, strong, and endless. Emma stood, bowed her head, and smiled. Backstage, people came to congratulate her. Some were musicians, Some were just music lovers. One woman said, "I don't know your full story, but I felt it in every note." A reporter from a well-known magazine interviewed her after the show. They asked about her past, her journey, and her future plans. Emma spoke with quiet honesty. "I stopped playing for a long time," she said, "but the music never left me. I think it was just waiting for me to come back." The article was published a week later. The title read, "The Waitress Who Touched." The world, more people read it, more people found her music. A charity group reached out asking if she would be willing to perform for children in hospitals. A local music school offered her a position to teach part-time. Emma was overwhelmed by all the choices. But one thing was clear, music had become her path again. Not for fame, not for money, but for connection, for healing, for meaning. She started teaching a small group of children once a week. Most of them had never played before. One girl named Lily reminded Emma of herself, shy, quiet, but full of feeling. Emma helped her learn a simple song. When Lily played it for the first time, her face lit up with joy. That moment meant more to Emma than any applause. One evening, Emma received a message from a man who claimed to be a documentary filmmaker. He had seen her videos and read about her story. He wanted to make a short film about her life and music. Emma wasn't sure. She didn't like cameras, but after thinking about it, she agreed. "Only if it helps someone else," she said. The filmmaker came to town and spent a week following her. He filmed her walking to work, playing at the diner, teaching children, and sitting at her apartment piano. He didn't ask her to act. He wanted the truth. When the short film was released online, it quickly spread. Millions of people watched it. Many left comments like, "She reminded me of who I used to be," or "I cried listening to her story." Emma's world was growing larger every day. She started receiving letters from all over the country and even from other countries. People sent their own stories of loss, dreams, and rediscovery. Emma read each one, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling. She kept the letters in a box, calling it her music family. But with the attention came pressure. People expected more now. Some wanted her to tour. Others asked her to release more music. Some critics began to write about her, saying things like, "Can she really keep up with professionals?" Or was her success just luck? Emma tried not to let it get to her. But late at night, doubts crept in. Was she good enough? Was she ready for all this? The fear she had fought for years returned. She started to feel anxious before playing. Her hands trembled. Her heart beat too fast. One day, she sat at her piano and couldn't play a single note. The room felt heavy. The silence was thick. She closed the lid and sat on the floor, feeling empty. That night, she called Professor Lawrence. "I don't know what's happening," she said. "I feel like I'm falling apart again." He listened patiently. Then he said, "Emma, music is not just about performance. It's about truth. Don't forget why you started playing again. Not for applause, not for cameras, for healing, for connection. If it gets too loud out there, come back to the quiet." Emma hung up and sat in silence for a long time. Then she went to her kitchen, made tea, and lit a candle. She opened the box of letters and read a few. She smiled through her tears. The love in those words reminded her of who she was. The next morning, she walked to the diner like always. She greeted Mike, put on her apron, and served coffee. That evening, she played again, not for a big crowd, not for the internet, but for the people in her town, the regulars, the ones who had believed in her first. The music came back, soft and steady. Emma had learned something important. Her music didn't have to be loud to be powerful. She didn't have to be famous to matter. Her journey wasn't about becoming a star. It was about being real, about touching hearts, one note at a time, and that was more than enough. Emma's journey had taken her from the quiet corners of a small-town diner to bright stages filled with applause. But she never forgot where she started, the days when she was invisible. The nights when she played just for herself, and the people who believed in her when no one else did. Her story wasn't just about music or fame. It was about courage, healing, and the power of being seen. The diner remained her home base. Even with growing invitations and opportunities, Emma kept her routine. She arrived early, greeted Mike with a warm smile, and started setting tables. The customers had changed too. Many came just to hear her play, or to catch a glimpse of the pianist who had captured hearts across the country. But Emma treated everyone with kindness, never letting the attention go to her head. One chilly autumn evening, a special invitation arrived in the mail. It was from the city's symphony orchestra. They were hosting a charity gala and wanted Emma to perform as the featured soloist. This was a big deal, the kind of event where musicians wore tuxedos and gowns, and the audience included important people from all over. Emma's heart raced as she read the letter. This wasn't just any concert. It was a chance to show the world who she really was. The days before the gala were filled with practice. Emma worked tirelessly on a classical piece she loved, blending her own emotions into every note. She practiced in the early morning hours and late at night, sometimes losing herself in the music until dawn. She wanted to be ready not just to play well, but to tell her story through sound. When the gala night arrived, Emma dressed in a simple but elegant gown. She felt nervous, but also excited. This was her moment. Backstage, musicians chatted quietly, tuning instruments and adjusting sheet music. Emma felt both a part of this world and still a little apart. She remembered the shy girl at the diner. Piano, the one who had almost given up on music. Her name was called. She walked onto the grand stage, the spotlight warm on her face. The orchestra was ready behind her, waiting for the cue. Emma sat at the grand piano, took a deep breath, and began. The music flowed like a river, carrying memories and hope. She played with passion and grace, her fingers dancing across the keys. The audience listened in rapt silence, moved by the story the music told. Some closed their eyes, others leaned forward, and many had tears shining in their eyes. When the final note faded, the room erupted into applause. Emma stood and bowed, feeling a wave of joy and gratitude. For the first time, she wasn't just the waitress or the pianist from the diner. She was an artist, a storyteller, a woman who had found her voice. After the gala, many people came to congratulate her. Among them was a man named David, a producer who had worked with famous musicians. He approached her with a friendly smile. "You have something special," he said. "I'd love to help you record an album." Emma felt a mix of excitement and hesitation. She wanted to share her music with more people, but she also wanted to stay true to herself. David assured her that he believed in her vision and wanted to support her journey. Over the next few months, Emma worked with David and a small team of musicians and producers. They recorded her songs, both classical pieces and her own compositions. Emma was nervous in the studio, but the team made her feel comfortable. They encouraged her to express herself freely, to let the real Emma shine through every note. The album, titled From Silence to Song, was released to positive reviews. Critics praised her emotional depth and honesty. Fans sent letters and messages from around the world. Emma's music touched people who had never heard her name before. Despite her growing success, Emma stayed grounded. She continued working at the diner part-time and teaching music lessons to children in her town. She wanted to give back to the community that had supported her from the start. She especially loved helping children who struggled with confidence, encouraging them to find their own voices through music. One spring afternoon, Emma received a surprise visitor at the diner. It was a woman she hadn't seen in years, her aunt, who had cared for her after her parents died. They hugged tightly, tears in their eyes. Her aunt said, "I'm so proud of you. You found your way back to the music and to yourself." Emma smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. She realized how far she had come from pain and silence to hope and sound. A few months later, Emma was invited to speak at a conference about overcoming adversity through art. She stood on the stage and shared her story: the loss, the fear, the rediscovery of music, and the kindness of strangers. She spoke about the power of never giving up, even when life feels impossible. Her words moved the audience. After the talk, people came up to thank her, sharing their own struggles and dreams. Emma felt connected to a larger community. one that valued honesty and courage. Her life was full, busy, and sometimes challenging. But Emma faced each day with a heart full of music and hope. At night, when the diner was quiet and the stars shone, outside her window, she often sat at her piano, playing softly. Sometimes she played new songs inspired by the people she had met, the stories she had heard, and the love she had found. Other times she played the old pieces she had learned as a child, remembering her parents and the little girl who dreamed big dreams. Emma knew her journey wasn't over. There would be new challenges, new fears, and new opportunities. But she was ready, because she had learned the most important thing, that no matter how dark the silence, music could bring light. And Emma, the once invisible waitress who dared to sit at the piano, had become a voice for many, a reminder that even the quietest hearts can sing the loudest songs.